Today we'll talk about the Suunto Aqua headphones and how they compare to the Shokz Openswim Pros. On the surface, these are very similar to Shokz Openswim Pros. There are small differences which I'll go over, but to be fair, in all my testing I haven't found anything that's really annoying, apart maybe from playlist management, but we'll get to that in a second. So I've been using these headphones for about 2 months now, and mainly in more of a kite surfing or wing foiling kind of a setup, purely because my left arm is absolutely shredded, so I managed to rip it out completely. Mountain biking, not really recommended. About 1.5 years ago, never came back to its original state. And the problem for me is that when I'm swimming, I cause a lot of alarm amongst all the lifeguards. I basically look like I'm drowning, but I'm not. So most of the testing took place either on the water or when I was crashing. Now, these are very similar to Shokz Openswim Pros and pretty much any other bone conducting overhead headphones in the same similar shape that I've tested. I don't really need to tether them when I'm on the water. They never come off, and as you can see here, I do come off quite often, right? There's loads of crashes always involved. This is just the nature of the sport. So when you're swimming, when you're underwater, and obviously I took them surfing as well, got covered by waves a few times, and yeah, they did just well. You know, there was no issues with them whatsoever when it comes to like staying on your head. So if you're doing rolls underwater when you're swimming, that shouldn't be an issue either. Now, in terms of in terms of durability, you know what, like if they can survive salty water, and that's always my point, if you're using them in a swimming pool or fresh water, there's very little that can harm them. But if you introduce any electronics, in my book, to salty water environment, when you have them in the open waters and they can survive that, that means the quality is on point. And I had no complaints about the Shokz quality in that regard, nor I have with these. After 3 weeks of intensive use in the water, and I gave them to my friends for testing as well, because everyone were curious how does it actually feel to have music on when you're doing these sports. They've been recharged and charged up about maybe 20 times now, and they're going strong, so kudos for that. I know, 40-year-old guy in a wetsuit with a broken shoulder, give me a break, don't stare. The question you're probably asking yourself is whether these are better in terms of audio quality than the Shokz. That is a little bit harder to answer, because if you're getting headphones that rely on bone conduction to process music, to deliver the music, you basically get a bunch of vibrations going through your skull into your ear canal. So the quality isn't that great on any of them. What I would say about these Suuntos is that they're a little bit louder than the Openswim Pros. Not by a huge margin, but you can definitely feel that when you're out of the water. When you're submerged, I would say they're about the same, and weirdly enough, as I said in the Shokz review, which I'll highlight some of that, and when you're underwater, they actually sound better. It's the same with when you're wearing a beanie, because it's pressing those headphones closer to your head, and I'm guessing the water's conducting those vibrations better. You can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm probably am, for the reason, not for the fact that they actually sound better underwater or under your beanie. Under my previous video, there were a few of you saying that you would never buy a set of headphones that don't have USB-C charging. I've got some bad news, well, good and bad. These have USB-C charging into the charger itself, but the charger is kind of proprietary. I freaking hate this word. Can just like, it doesn't stick, give a Polish guy proprietary. Basically their own system. And the reason for that is obviously if you put any USB ports or any open ports on something that gets submerged that often, it will potentially corrode really quickly and will stop working. Again, salt versus electronics. But also if they would be trying to figure this out with a little closing door like you get on action cameras, that will be too bulky. And if you use rubber brakes, and hence why we've got the governments across the world we're having right now. All because of broken rubbers. Quite honestly, apart from the morning poo, changing out of the wetsuit has to be the best feeling in the world. I've already spoken to a number of companies who make these kind of headphones. Why aren't we having wireless charging in these? And apparently the wireless charging module would just take up too much room in them, and they would have to make them bulkier. If they're bulkier, they would be falling off our heads and all this kind of stuff. So looks like for at least the time being, we're stuck with custom chargers, which isn't ideal, but if there's nothing they can do, there's nothing they can do. Right, I need to get changed. Let's go back in the office and we'll talk about the call quality you can get for these through the Bluetooth, but also the issue well, issue, depends how you look at it, with the playlist management. For the sake of full disclosure, I asked Suunto to send me these headphones over because I really wanted to test them, and quite a few of you sent me messages to try them out. And clearly there's no other reviews, at least I couldn't find any, that speak to these headphones, so here we are. Obviously Suunto did not pay me to do this, and also what I normally ask of brands is that if they're sending me a product, they need to take into account that who published the video, regardless whether it's good or bad. So they need to be sure that whatever they're sending has to be top notch. Now for the mic test, because I'm pretty sure if you're using this in a Bluetooth mode, you're gonna be picking up some calls. So here's the raw audio you get on the phone itself. It's recorded within the phone. It's not me sticking a mic next to the phone and distorting the sound. So this is probably the best representation you can get from what the other person will hear when you're using these guys. So this is the sound coming directly from Suunto Aqua headphones in a home environment. So when you're picking up the calls, this is what the other person is gonna hear when you're talking through the Suunto Aquas. That custom charging system isn't all bad, because Suunto comes with this little charger, and that thing obviously has a USB-C port just here, but it also acts as a power bank. So in theory, this gives you extra 20 hours of charge on top of the 10 hours of runtime on the headphones. Now, it's not 10 hours in real world unless you're running this at 50%, which is pretty much the case with any other headphones you see out there, from Sony to Bose to Shokz. They're all advertising their average time in like scenario where you're probably using 50% volume. Obviously, if you're blasting these at full, which I normally do when I'm running or I'm swimming or kite surfing, that means typically you're getting about maybe 8 hours, okay, on a full charge, which I haven't tested. I never run these dry because that would be probably impossible. But after 4 hours being on the water, listening to MP3 files, I was left with about 50%, 48% of charge, which gives you probably 8 hours if you dry them to zero. That's not a bad score, because I can't really see myself doing any sports activity for more than that. Now, if you're an ultra runner, obviously you have to take that into account, but you know, this isn't a really big unit that you can carry with you. You can just charge it up wherever. The other thing is, if you're using this in the salty water, obviously these connectors are not super salt proof. Any salt, the environment's gonna leave some residue on those little connectors here. But again, it's not a big deal. If you've experienced that with any other electronic devices, all you have to do is really scrape that whatever residue is left on it. And if you're in the UK, probably every single person you're gonna approach, especially with a hoodie and balaclava, will have a knife on them, so it just makes life much easier. Now, in terms of swimming, as I mentioned, because of my broken wing, I couldn't really test any of these AI capabilities because it will be probably thinking I'm drowning, and coaching, I can't throw this arm forward enough. So I still swim, but it looks horrible, which is really gutting because I used to swim all the time. Now, if you're a swimmer and you need that insight of whether this coaching really works, I would say go to Reddit, but there's very few posts. Actually, I haven't found any other reviews of these headphones, which is very, very weird. So I'm really sorry if you're here for that. I genuinely can't answer those questions. But there are a few other things to these headphones that are fairly unique and utilize that AI system built in. One of them being the neck fatigue if you're cycling. And now, if you do a lot of road cycling, it affects you probably more than mountain biking, as I do. But this is where some of my mountain biking friends might get a little bit pissed with me, because I am getting a gravel bike. I just found that going out on the road on a mountain bike is a massive bitch, especially if you're using chunky tires on the tarmac. It's just too hard. So I'm getting gravel bike, and I think these will come in a little bit more handy. What I found is that this coaching or reminders within the app telling you that your neck is in a really shit position and you're gonna suffer later comes in pretty useful, especially on the very long climbs. So I hope this clears things up. Not so much when you're going down and that alert pops up as well, that your neck is in the wrong position in relation to your body, but if you're going down, there's nothing you can do. You need to look for the exits, and if you've been mountain biking for a while, you know how crucial that is to keep your eye on the ball and making sure that you see the other berm coming up and prep for it, which basically in my case resulted in breaking the shoulder off. I was just editing this, going through some of the questions I had on the previous headphones reviews, is whether you can use Bluetooth mode when you're in a swimming pool, and the answer is no. And it has nothing to do with Shokz or Suunto or whoever else. It's just the fact that Bluetooth signal is not designed to penetrate bodies of water. It might go through like a couple of mils of water, but otherwise that connection is going to get broken. And if you're using your watch to stream the music, or even having your phone by the swimming pool, it's just not going to work. Hence why we've got the MP3 mode, and there's no work around this. Some people say that they put their watches on the neck strap band thing. It just don't. Just use the MP3. It's not going to work. As soon as you go underwater, that connection is going to get broken, and basically you lose the music that you're listening to. If you find my videos useful, I would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button and a like on the video. It helps to get a video to a wider audience, but it also helps me to create more videos like this. Big question is how these two guys compare, and I would say in terms of the build quality, there is not much difference. If you're looking for something more robust, I would say they're almost identical. The Suuntos are a tiny bit bigger than the Shokz. It's not like, oh shit, that's misaligned, misadvertising. But you can see these are slightly bigger. It makes zero difference. The weight is about the same, around 32 grams, I believe. So there's nothing you can actually feel. When you put them on your ears, they feel exactly the same. The button layout is more or less the same, bar those ports on the bottom. So if you look here, the Shokz have those little charging ports here, and the buttons are a little bit more cramped. So this slightly wider solution is better, especially if you're cycling, running, swimming in a cold. It's just easier to find the buttons for plus and minus to increase and decrease the volume. Where Shokz are slightly better, in my opinion, is that button here. That's your action button, so that basically gives you the ability to skip the tracks and pause and start the music. On Shokz, and I'll do a close-up here, on Shokz it's a little bit more accentuated, so it's easier to find when you're sliding your finger up and down. And again, it's not a massive deal breaker, but something to be aware of. And I live in pretty cold climate, so we do a lot of sports in freezing conditions, and very often we're wearing gloves anyway. So all those buttons on the bottom that are nice and smooth, and I don't know what the design team was aiming here at. I'm guessing this is just because it'll be much harder to keep them IP68 certified for the water. But I find them a little bit harder to press when you're out and about and find them exactly where they are. It's just nitpicking, because both of these, I'm still super stoked with the Shokz. I've been using them all the time, and you can tell there's really not much damage to them, and I'm not really good in taking care of my gear, because both of these come with some kind of cases. Those cases are nowhere to be found. I'm not really a cat, so I don't really like boxes, and if I'm traveling anywhere, I really don't want to add a bulky box into my backpack, or especially when you're going abroad. These are so tiny you can just chuck them in anywhere. The obvious advantage of Suunto is all the AI features that these headphones have, and one of them is also your jump assessment, so you can see how you improve over time and how you land, all this kind of stuff. But also the neck mobility, which I found a little bit asymmetrical, and I'm not 100% sure how accurate this is. However, I agree, my neck isn't really that flexible in this broken side, because all the rotator cuffs are so much shorter after the surgery. But obviously, if you are in full health and you're complete and you're not going cyborg route like me, that might be handy for you, just to improve or maybe stretch a little bit more and make sure your neck movements are more or less equal in both sides. You'll never get the full equality here. That's like not really in line with woke politics, but there is no equality in the movement of your body. If you're running, you know that yourself, especially if you've been running for a while, you know there's always some discrepancy between your left and right stroke. That's okay. The same with swimming. I used to swim a lot, and I know that my right stroke was way more consistent than my left, and I knew that I'm pulling so much more power through the right than the left side, and I had to compensate in the water. Now, the idea with these is that they coach you when you're in the water, and if you've ever been doing any, well, I wouldn't say even competition stuff, but if you ever taken up any sort of coaching, and if you're mountain biking or surfing, kite surfing in our case, we've got Bluetooth headsets. It's not a biggie. We can talk to you when you're out on the water and correct your mistakes. Where you're swimming, that is a bit of a challenge because no one can hear anything when you're submerged and you're digging in. With these, they do give you cues, and because they sound pretty well in the water, especially when they're submerged, that might be a really handy feature for a lot of you. They're both really, really good headsets. I would say that Suunto offers better value just because of those AI additions and the fact that they come with a battery bank, and it might not be a deal breaker, but having ability just to chuck them inside of that little tiny battery bank and charge them up on the go, I think it's a really cool feature. I'm definitely using that very often on my Suunto wings when I'm running, but because I like having setups that do everything, and I've got just one set of headphones in my van, I think these will replace my Suunto wings purely because I do about 80% of water activities versus 20% of on-land activities. And this is more of a community ask. If you're a swimmer and you own a pair of these and you've been using them for a while, I would love for you to drop me a comment below and just give me some feedback on how they feel in the water. And again, apologies for me not being able to test them in the swimming pool, but you don't want to see cripple swimming. There's another question I've been asked a lot about the Shokz, and I'm sure this is going to resurface around the Aquas as well, is whether you can listen to audiobooks when you're swimming and using these guys. So the answer is yes. Yes, you can. You can upload the MP3 files if you convert them to MP3, just as you can do with the Shokz, no probes whatsoever. The problem is, however, that these will not resume your audiobook when you switch them on again, so they'll start it from the beginning, so it makes them quite useless for that. For podcasts, however, yeah, if you can download them and into MP3 file, it's not a biggie because they're normally like, 45 minutes, unless it's Rogan, then it's like 4 hours of blah blah blah. But for shorter stuff, yeah, they work. I wouldn't use them for audiobooks. On the Suunto, you can actually create playlists with your MP3 files. The downside to this is that you can't skip through them just with the headphones themselves. You have to go to an app and select the playlist you want for your activity. Now again, going back to Reddit, I've seen that someone posted that they just don't really carry their phone with them if they're in the swimming pool. And I fully appreciate that. I think that is a bit of an oversight, and I really hope that they will add this as a feature of, I don't know, combination of the buttons that will allow you to cycle through your playlist depending on activity you're doing or intensity. So hopefully down the line this will happen. I've emailed Suunto about this and they came back with, well, we'll pass it on to our engineers. So I don't know if that's going to have any impact whatsoever, but it will be a really cool feature to add. Now, when I messaged Shokz, what they said is basically I got this reply, which is very dry, and I'm pretty sure this is not Shokz stance on things. I just think someone in customer service had a really bad day, but it is like one of the driest answers I had from a customer support in a while. I wasn't digging into anything, I just asked a legit question. Why would you remove a feature that we had forever in the previous headsets of Openswims? I have no idea what it was removed. What I can tell you is that there's a workaround, which one of my subscribers actually found out, so shout out to you. There's a little ad here. That if you set these to shuffle mode and you go, I think it's like every third or fourth song comes from the other folder, that kind of works in a way. I found it pretty much working reliably. It is a shit workaround, so you have to set them to shuffle mode, go to the song that you recognize from your other playlist, and then switch off the shuffle mode and you're in the new folder. If you got 17 folders, that's gonna be a bit of a shite job to do, but I've only got 2. I've got one playlist for chill stuff, so if I'm surfing or I'm on hydrofoil, that's my flowy crap. And then if I'm on a kite and it's really windy and I really want some heavy metal when I'm doing that, that's the playlist number 2. In conclusion, if you're looking for a good set of headphones, these are very comparable, but just on the basis of the fact that they cost exactly the same, and I found the Suuntos to be slightly louder, which helps me, especially in windy environment, and the fact that I get that extra in terms of the AI, which I'm sure you're going to get way more use when you're actually swimming and you need that coaching, but also for cyclists, this is slightly better value. And having that little power bank with you might not be a deal breaker, but if you're out and about, say you're cruising through your highlands, lowlands, or Arizona, I'm sorry, my geography in America is pretty crap. But if you're out and about and you don't have your power bank with you, you can just put them in that little charger, recharge the headphones, and carry on. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions whatsoever. And if you have any experience with these, like I said, I would love a feedback from swimmers, but also every single person who used these. If you had any issues, please drop them below, because after several weeks of using these and bashing them around, they've been stellar for me. It doesn't mean they'll be stellar for you. And if you want to learn more about the Shokz Openswim Pros, there's a link somewhere here or here. I honestly, I can never remember which side they appear. Anyway, have a great one. Hope this helped. See you in the next one.